I have lived a quiet life for as long as I can remember. A life made of early mornings, tired hands, and a heart that loved too deeply. When you are a mother, you don't think about yourself. You think about school shoes, warm meals, and whether your child is sleeping well at night. That was my world. That was my joy. My son Daniel was the light of my life. When his father died in that terrible accident, the world felt like it had collapsed around me. I was only 32, with a scared 6-year-old boy clinging to my dress. I wanted to fall apart, but I couldn't. Not when he needed me. So I became strong in quiet ways. I became the woman who woke before sunrise and slept long after midnight. I cleaned other people's houses while mine stayed modest and simple. I washed strangers' clothes while Daniel's school uniform was always clean and pressed. I patched his torn sweaters with careful stitches and kissed his forehead every night as if love could sew his life together. I never felt poor. I felt rich every time he smiled. When he grew older and told me that he had met someone special, my heart bloomed like a spring flower. I imagined things I had never allowed myself to imagine before. I pictured myself sitting in the front row of his wedding, straightening his collar, wiping his nervous hands. I thought about welcoming a daughter into my life. Another girl to love, someone to call me Mom. I started saving small ideas in my heart. A hand-embroidered handkerchief for him. A simple gold bracelet for her. Nothing expensive, just pieces of my love woven into small gifts. One quiet afternoon, I sat at my kitchen table holding my old phone. The light through the window was soft, touching the cracked paint on the walls and the steam rising from my tea. I was nervous like a child. I had practiced the words in my head. I didn't want to sound like someone demanding. I didn't want to be a burden. When she answered, her voice sounded smooth and busy, like she was always in a hurry. "Hello," she said. I swallowed my nerves. "Dear," I said gently. "I was just wondering. Have you chosen a date for the wedding? I want to prepare something special. I don't want to miss it." There was a tiny pause. A breath. Then laughter. Not happy laughter. Not shy laughter. Just careless. "Oh," she said. "We already got married yesterday. Just for special people." The words didn't reach my ears right away. They fell slowly, like stones sinking to the bottom of a deep lake. Special people. My hands started to shake, but she didn't notice. I told her I was happy for them. I think I said congratulations. I don't remember clearly. What I do remember is this. After the call ended, I sat very still in that small kitchen. The tea went cold. The clock kept ticking loudly. And for the first time in many years I felt very small. I wasn't angry. I wasn't loud. I was just invisible. And somehow that hurt the most. The days after the phone call passed slowly, like thick fog that refused to lift. I moved through my small home quietly. I still made my tea in the mornings. I still swept the floor. I still watered the little plant on my windowsill. From the outside, nothing had changed. Inside, everything had. I kept thinking about that word she used, special. It echoed in my heart when I folded laundry, when I washed cups, when I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I tried to understand it. Who was special enough to stand beside my son on his most important day, but not special enough to watch from a corner? Not special enough to cry quietly in happiness? I did not tell anyone. Not my neighbors, not the ladies at the market. I swallowed the pain the way old women often do, silently, without making anyone uncomfortable. At night, I opened an old wooden box I kept under my bed. Inside were things I had never thrown away. Daniel's tiny socks, his first broken toy car, birthday cards he had drawn with shaking childhood hands. I held those things and whispered to myself I was special once. A week passed. On the 7th day my phone rang. Her name appeared on the screen, bright and sharp as if it had teeth. I hesitated before answering. My fingers felt heavy. My heart felt tired. When I picked up, she didn't waste time. "The rent is overdue," she said quickly. "Did you transfer it?" No hello. No gentle words. No how have you been? Just a question that felt like a hand reaching into my pocket. I looked around my small living room. The faded couch. The old curtains. The thin blanket folded carefully at the edge of the chair. I thought of my modest savings, not large but safe. Money I had kept for medicine emergencies, maybe one quiet trip someday. I thought of the night shifts I had worked. The aches in my back. The years I had lived without new shoes so Daniel could have better ones. My voice came out calm, almost softer than usual. "Didn't I tell you?" I began. She cut me off. "Tell me what?" I held the phone a little tighter. "That I only do special things," I said slowly, carefully. "For special people." There was silence. Real silence this time. Not polite silence. Not busy silence. Shock. She didn't answer right away. In that small moment, I felt something strange bloom in my chest. It wasn't anger. It wasn't cruelty. It was dignity. After the call ended, my hands trembled. Not from fear, but from emotion I couldn't name. I sat down and pressed my palm against my heart, as if to calm it. That night I didn't cry. I slept deeply for the first time in days. I realized something important. I had been loving them loudly, but loving myself quietly. And maybe it was time to change the volume. From that day on, I stopped being the invisible wallet. I stopped measuring my worth by what I could give. I stopped waiting to be invited into a life that clearly had no room for me. I didn't stop loving my son. I just stopped letting love turn me into a shadow. And in that quiet decision, something inside me began to wake up. Silence is a strange thing. For many years I feared it. I filled my days with work, noise, worry, and other people's needs. I thought if I stopped even for a moment I would feel lonely. But after that phone call, I discovered a different kind of silence. A peaceful one. For the first time in my life, I wasn't rushing to check my phone every morning. I wasn't waiting for their messages. I wasn't counting the days until they needed something from me. The quiet in my home was no longer a reminder of being forgotten. It became a soft blanket wrapped around my shoulders. I began to notice myself. Not as a mother. Not as a helper. Not as a solution. Just as a woman. I woke up early and made tea just for me, not in a hurry, not between tasks. I sat by the window and watched the street slowly wake up. I began to take care of the small things I had ignored for years. I stitched new covers for my old cushions. I washed my curtains and let them dance in the sunlight. Then I found my hands itching for soil. Behind my house was a small patch of tired earth. It had been there for years, full of weeds and forgotten dreams. One morning I took a chair and sat beside it. "I see you," I whispered, not to the garden but to myself. I bought tiny packets of seeds with the little money I saved by not sending it away. Roses. Lavender. Jasmine. I didn't know if they would grow. I didn't know if I still had the right touch. But I tried. Each time I pushed a seed into the earth, it felt like I was burying pain and planting hope. Each time I watered them, it felt like I was finally pouring care back into my own life. My phone rang sometimes. Their names appeared. Their messages stayed short. They needed help with bills, with groceries, with things that were never my responsibility, but had always been placed on my shoulders. This time I didn't ignore them. I answered kindly. "I'm sorry, dear," I said softly. "I only help special people now." I did not shout. I did not accuse. I did not explain. And somehow that frightened them more than anger ever could. They were used to my tears. They were used to my panic. They were used to my silent obedience. They were not used to my peace. At night, I stood in front of the small mirror in my room. I looked at the face that stared back at me, the wrinkles, the tired eyes, the soft silver hair. For the first time, I didn't see weakness. I saw survival. I saw sacrifice. I saw strength. I started walking slowly around the neighborhood every evening. People smiled at me more. Maybe because I finally stood straighter. Maybe because my eyes were no longer begging for love. I wasn't becoming cold. I was becoming whole. My revenge was not loud. It was not cruel. It was not dramatic. It was quiet. It was calm. It was self-respect. Somewhere inside me, a truth was blooming, just like the tiny green sprouts in my garden. I did not need to be invited to be valuable. I did not need to be used to be loved. I did not need to be special to deserve respect. And in that silence I found something stronger than pain. I found myself. Time has a gentle way of revealing truth. It doesn't shout. It doesn't rush. It simply opens doors when hearts are finally ready to walk through them. Months passed. My little garden bloomed the way I never thought it would. The roses climbed carefully toward the light. The jasmine filled the air with soft, sweet fragrance. My home felt warmer, not because someone else filled it, but because I finally did. Then one afternoon there was a knock on my door. It was soft, hesitant. When I opened the door, I saw my son. He looked like a boy again, not because he was young, but because the strength I once saw in him seemed tired now. His shoulders were heavy. His eyes held something new. Regret. "Mom," he whispered. That one word was enough to make my heart ache, but not break. I stepped aside and let him in. He sat on the old chair near the kitchen table, the same one he used to sit in when he was little. He rubbed his hands together the way he always did when he was nervous. "I didn't know," he said quietly. "I swear I didn't know how it would hurt you." I poured tea. Not because I needed to avoid the conversation, but because love, no matter how wounded, still lives in small actions. "I didn't ask you to be special," I said gently, setting the cup in front of him. "I just hoped to be remembered." His eyes filled with tears then. He stood up slowly and did something he hadn't done in years. He knelt. Right there on my floor, my grown son knelt in front of me like the frightened little boy he once was. "I was wrong, Mom," he said, his voice breaking. "I let someone convince me that simple things didn't matter. I forgot that you are my beginning." I placed my hand on his head, not to forgive everything, not to erase pain, but to acknowledge love. And that changed everything. After that day, he began to visit more often. Not because he needed money, not because of problems, but because he wanted to sit in silence with me, to drink tea, to listen to my stories, to remember. His wife never came. She never called. And strangely, that was okay. My revenge had already happened. I didn't take anything from them. I didn't shame them. I didn't shout my pain. I simply stopped being their safety net when they denied my place in their lives. And when my son finally saw the emptiness that created, he came back. Not because he had to, but because he felt it. Now, when I look in the mirror, I see a woman who survived being forgotten. A woman who learned that love should never feel like begging. A woman who chose dignity over desperation. The world may call it revenge, but I call it peace. I am not bitter. I am not hard. I am soft in the right places and strong in the rest. And when I sit in my garden, surrounded by flowers I planted with my own hands, I whisper to myself, I was never invisible. I was never unworthy. And I was always special.